The envelope was too elegant to trust. Cream cardstock, gold foil, and not a single fingerprint. My name wasn't even on the front. Just, "The Blaine family requests the pleasure of your company." It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. I stood in my kitchen, fingers resting on the edge of the counter, tea forgotten and cold. The air smelled like lavender from the candle I lit out of habit, not peace. I reread the invitation again, searching for a hint of warmth. There wasn't any. Will used to say, "My parents aren't cold, they're just formal." That was the kind of thing people said about buildings with no windows. Still, I'd never actually met them, not officially. He said they traveled often, weren't into drop-ins. But apparently they were into formal engagement dinners, complete with calligraphy and RSVP codes. My phone buzzed. "Hey, babe." Will's voice was extra chipper, the kind of bright tone that made you wonder what it was masking. "Got the invite?" "I did," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Just didn't know I was marrying a duke." He laughed too quickly. "It's just their thing, jazz. My mom loves tradition. You know how East Coasters are." I didn't. I was born in Beaumont, raised in Austin, where neighbors left pies on porches and no one used the phrase legacy estate unless it was on a wine bottle. My apartment was warm, cluttered with books and soft throws. It had character. The Blaine envelope had weight. I arrived at the estate 20 minutes early. I still don't know why. I guess I thought being early would help me feel less behind. The gates opened slowly, like the property had to think about whether I belonged. A woman greeted me at the door, not with a smile, but with a nod. "Miss Carter," she said, already turning before I responded. Inside, everything gleamed, floors you could slip on, chandeliers that looked like they'd fallen out of Versailles. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft tick of a clock somewhere above. Will met me in the foyer, kissed my cheek, and handed me a slim, gold pen. "It's engraved," he said with a proud grin. "Your initials. Thought it might be nice. For what comes next." "What's coming next?" I asked. He just winked and said, "Come on." They're waiting. The dining room was slightly sunken, with long windows draped in velvet. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors loomed above us, watching like judges in a quiet courtroom. Isolde Blaine, Will's mother, sat at the head of the table in a navy sheath dress, spine like an arrow. She extended her hand, not to shake, but to acknowledge. "So," she said once I'd sat, "you're the woman who has William so spirited these days." "Jasmine," I offered, with a polite smile. "It's nice to finally meet you." Her lips twitched, but never quite formed a smile. "Charming," she said. "And what is it you do again?" "Something with donations." "I work in nonprofit strategy," I replied. "We design grant programs for educational access in underserved areas." "How quaint," she murmured, slicing her asparagus. Reginald Blaine, Will's father, said little, only occasionally peering over his glasses as if I were a report to be filed. Dinner passed in awkward fits. Every time I tried to share a story, the table seemed to cool a few degrees. I felt like I was slowly being pressed into a mold I hadn't agreed to wear. And then dessert came. The staff cleared the plates swiftly, and Isolde lifted a hand. "There's one family tradition we still observe," she said. A black velvet folder appeared in her manicured fingers. She placed it beside my plate, as if offering a second course. I opened it. 6 pages. Legal language. Signatures already in place. Reginald's, Isolde's, even William's, scrawled in navy ink. My name, however, was blank. I blinked. "What is this?" William leaned closer. "It's standard, Jazz." Just something to protect the estate. Doesn't change anything. My hands had gone cold. The gold pen sat beside the folder, its surface catching the light. For a moment, I saw my reflection in it, blurred, stretched, almost unfamiliar. I looked up at them. The room was quiet again. The portraits watched. The chandelier hummed. And I suddenly wasn't sure what I was supposed to sign, my name or my worth. Just a formality, Isolde said, her smile porcelain. If things go south, we'd like you to leave as you came, in silence. She didn't blink when she said it. Her tone was so smooth, I almost missed the blade behind it. The dining room, lit by a chandelier shaped like falling icicles, had gone utterly still. Even the staff had disappeared, as if cued to leave me alone in this moment. I looked down at the folder. The pages didn't tremble, but I did. Each line was written like a wall, airtight, unkind, precise. No mention of shared assets. No grace period. No protections. It wasn't a prenup. It was a warning disguised as protocol. William sat to my right, a statue carved in discomfort. His hand reached for mine, then stopped halfway. It's just what they do, he murmured, not about you. I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up the pen, the one he gave me as a gift 20 minutes ago. Gold, etched with my initials. It gleamed like trust. Then I placed it back on the table. This doesn't feel like a welcome, I said, my voice steady. It feels like a wall with no door. I stood. I didn't slam anything, didn't raise my voice. There's a kind of silence that can roar if you hold it right. No one followed me to the door. The same woman who had greeted me nodded again, expressionless, and held it open. Outside, the sky had gone gray, the kind of deep steel that hangs low before a storm. I didn't run. I walked slowly, coat clutched, heels tapping on stone like punctuation. By the time I reached my car, the rain had started. It wasn't dramatic, just steady. The kind that soaks without asking. The drive back through the hill country should have been beautiful. It wasn't. Trees blurred into shapes. The roads shimmered under tireless drizzle. Inside my car, it was quiet except for the faint sound of windshield wipers and the occasional crackle of thought. My father used to say, silence can be dignity or dismissal. You better know which one you're standing in. I wasn't sure which this was yet, but I knew it didn't feel like home. When I got back to my apartment, the lavender candle was still half burnt on the windowsill. The warmth of the room felt artificial now, like it had been waiting to comfort a version of me that hadn't walked out of that house. I changed into sweats, pulled my hair up, and curled onto the couch. The gold pen sat on the counter, untouched. A souvenir from a night that hadn't ended in celebration. Then a knock. 3 quick taps, then 2 slower ones. Will's knock. I hesitated, then opened the door. He was soaked. Hair clinging to his forehead, blazer dark with rain, shoes making squelching sounds on the mat. I'm sorry, he said before I could speak. His voice cracked, or maybe I just imagined that. I didn't want to embarrass them. That's all it was. I stared at him. Not embarrass them, or not stand up for me? He looked down. Raindrops kept falling from his eyelashes. I didn't know what to say. You know how my parents are. No, I said softly. I don't. We stood like that for a moment. The rain kept singing its same quiet song behind him. Inside, everything was still, even my breath. I love you, he said, eyes pleading. I believed that, in some version of his truth, he did. But love, I'd learned, wasn't just about feeling something. It was about standing beside it when it got inconvenient. I reached for the doorknob. You didn't choose me, Will. You chose to stay quiet. He opened his mouth, but I had already begun closing the door. Not out of anger. Not even hurt. Clarity. The lock clicked softly. Inside, I curled back onto the couch, blanket pulled tight. The gold pen sat on the counter, reflecting light from the dim kitchen bulb. It still gleamed, but it never felt heavier. At 3:11 a.m., I was wide awake, not from a nightmare, but from a knowing. The kind that settles in your chest like a cold stone, quiet and deliberate. The PDF was from 6 months ago, buried in an email thread about family onboarding. The subject line was something sterile, family assets and long-term planning. I hadn't opened it before. I hadn't needed to. But now, under the low hum of my desk lamp and beside a cup of cold coffee, I stared at it like it might blink. And there it was. Page 14. Clause 7b. In the event of any romantic engagement, the family reserves the right to introduce protective legal measures to ensure preservation of core estate holdings. Effective as of August 4th. I met Will in October. They didn't write the clause for me. They wrote it before me. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. The blinking cursor felt like a pulse I couldn't align with. My mind buzzed with one truth. I wasn't a threat. They just planned for me like I might be. I wasn't part of the family. I was pre-accounted risk. By 7 a.m., I was standing outside Melissa Tran's office. The downtown glass building reflected the soft pink of a sky that didn't care what I'd learned overnight. Inside, the receptionist gave me a tight smile and pointed to the corner suite. Melissa always liked the view. She was already there, reading a document through rectangular frames, her sharp eyes narrowing at margins. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She knew. "What did you find?" she asked before I even sat down. I handed her my laptop. "Read Clause 7b. She read it once. Then again. Then leaned back in her chair. They had it drafted before he ever held your hand. I swallowed. So I was never really invited in. Just forecasted. She took off her glasses. Jazz. You weren't loved. You were budgeted. It was the kind of sentence that sliced so clean it didn't even hurt until it had settled into the bones. She turned her screen to show me something new, notes she'd been keeping in case I ever came to her. A section labeled Discretionary Trust Protections. Another titled Image Management Clauses. One file, Media Strategies, Marriage to High-Value Individual, Public-Facing. They didn't just expect Will to propose. They built a perimeter before I ever knocked on the gate. Your name, Melissa said, was never on the guest list. Just the program notes. I sat there, silent. But this time, the silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like something sharpening. You're not walking into a wedding, she said. You're walking into a war. You don't go unarmed. Just then, my phone buzzed. A package had arrived. Hand-delivered. No return address. I made it home in under 15 minutes. The box sat on my doorstep like it had been waiting all night. Inside, a thick, weathered folder. My name on it in my father's handwriting. Not printed. Not typed. Just Jasmine, the way only he used to write it, looped, slightly tilted. I opened it carefully. There, inside, was everything. A formal estate transfer dated 3 months before he died. $29 million in assets, land parcels in hill country, mineral rights, accounts that hadn't seen daylight in years. And a note clipped to the corner. If they ever make you feel small, remember whose name you carry. My father had never met Will. But somehow he knew the world would try to weigh me down. And he gave me ballast. I ran my fingers over the folder. I hadn't spoken his name aloud in a long time. It caught in my throat, somewhere between grief and gratitude. The pen sat on my desk, still unused. But now it didn't feel like a relic from someone else's story. It felt like mine. The folder rested in my lap, heavy with names and numbers and memories. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there ready. My dad didn't say goodbye. He said, "Now go finish the story." I didn't bring rage. I brought receipts. A leather folder under my arm, the sun sharp overhead, and a resolve so still it felt like silence turned into armor. The Blaine estate looked the same, grand, symmetrical, emotionless. But something had shifted. I wasn't returning for their acceptance. I was returning to redraw the table. The housekeeper opened the carved mahogany door without a word. I stepped inside, each heel click a calm declaration. The formal parlor was already staged, Sunday brunch for 4, with duck confit plated in concentric circles and champagne chilling beside strawberries too polished to eat. William stood when I entered, surprise flickering behind his eyes like a light he couldn't reach in time. "Jasmine," he said, his voice uncertain, but his hands steady. I nodded and sat, carefully setting the leather folder beside my napkin, as if it were part of the tableware. Isolde looked me over once. Regal. Controlled. I saw her fingers twitch just slightly before reaching for her crystal flute. "We didn't expect you," she said. "I know," I replied. "That's why I came." Reginald cleared his throat, that performative sound of a man preparing to minimize disruption. Before they could redirect the conversation to duck glaze or the weather in Provence, I unlatched the folder and slid the document across the table. A fresh prenup, my version. Simple font. Clear terms. Shared intellectual property. Asset transparency. Mutual arbitration in lieu of power imbalance. And my name at the top. Centered. Bold. "This," I said, "is the version I would consider." William leaned forward, eyes darting down the page. He didn't speak, but the way his hand hovered over the paper told me he remembered what silence cost him last time. Reginald's tone was neutral, but his jaw tightened. "This is not standard for our family's arrangements." "Neither is being ambushed at dessert," I said evenly, eyes never leaving his. But I adjusted. Isolde's smile was practiced, the kind that didn't wrinkle her eyes. "You seem quite prepared, Jasmine." "I had good teachers," I said. One of them made sure I knew the difference between dignity and dismissal. Reginald motioned toward the hallway. Moments later, Franklin entered, the family's legal consigliere, always carrying both briefcases and discretion. He took one look at the document, then at me, then at Reginald. "She's well within legal standing," he said after a brief read. "This supersedes the previous document if signed mutually." I reached for the second paper in my folder. "And this," I added, sliding it across, "is a certified copy of my father's estate. You'll find protections, inheritance clauses, and a trust that cannot legally merge with Blaine Holdings. That's non-negotiable." Isolde inhaled quietly, as though my words had moved the air too sharply. "I see. So we're playing chess." "No," I said. "You already played. You used my face in your latest PR deck, the one about Blaine Industries partnering with minority-led community initiatives. You didn't ask. But you used me." Her eye twitched. "Just once. Enough." I looked at William then. "You once told me your family was just cautious." I believed that. Until I saw what fear looks like dressed up as legacy protection. Reginald folded his hands slowly. "This isn't personal. It's generational." "And yet," I said, "I'm still here. Tired of being handled like a liability. Tired of being written into your story without a pen of my own. The room fell quiet. The marble floors felt colder than before, but not to me. Then, the moment that said everything, Reginald turned to William. "Sign her version," he said, flatly. "Or walk away with nothing. Not from her. From us." William's mouth parted slightly. His hand reached slow, uncertain, and picked up the gold pen sitting between us. The same pen he gave me at that dinner. The one meant to sign their contract. But this time, it wasn't his to offer. It was mine. The file leaked at noon. By 4 p.m., my face was trending, with the caption, "Strategic Engagement Asset." I didn't need the retweets to confirm it. Lucy's trembling hands were enough. She held the tablet like it might shatter if she blinked. I stared at the screen, slide 3, top left corner. A professionally lit photo of me at a community fundraiser. Below it, a bullet point. Increased relatability index by 24% in Q2 outreach. Not Jasmine Carter. Just asset. She looked up at me, her voice cracking like the cheap coffee cups we used to steal from the campus cafe. "I swear I thought it was just going to donors. I didn't know they pitched you like a product." I took the tablet from her and scrolled down. Every line was curated manipulation, PR framing, community uplift buzzwords, Jasmine as access. A relationship strategy, not a relationship. I opened my laptop and uploaded every document I had. Not with an essay. No caption. No hashtags. Just truth. By the time I sipped the last of my morning coffee, the archive link had exploded. Melissa messaged me first. "It's moving. Podcasters are already dissecting the slides." Then a text. "CNN just emailed me. Brace." They didn't ask for interviews. They asked for access. For footage. For emotion. But I'd learned something. Clarity doesn't scream. By dinner, Twitter threads were breaking down the Jasmine clause, TikTokers dramatized Slack messages from the Blaine marketing team, and one lawyer on YouTube called it the social consent breach of the decade. William finally posted a video. White shirt. Soft piano track. Tired eyes. "I loved her," he said, but I was scared. Scared of what he never explained. Not once did he say my name. The comments were brutal. "Say her name, coward. PR isn't love. You had her. You chose the deck." By the next morning, Blaine Foundation's major sponsors had issued terse public statements cutting ties. One even linked to a new scholarship fund, named after my father. Melissa and I sat in her office, the hum of overworked devices surrounding us. "You didn't destroy them," she said, tapping the trackpad. "You just made them face the mirror." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Isolde officially resigned that Friday. No interviews, no statements. Reginald simply stopped appearing anywhere, like a power outage that no one dared acknowledge. But the real moment, the one that shifted the ground under me, came on a humid Thursday evening, a week after the leak. I was walking down 5th Street when I saw it. A billboard I hadn't authorized, hadn't licensed, yet there was my face again. Cropped from the PR deck, eyes softened, a slogan underneath. Legacy starts with transparency. I stopped cold. Before I could think, a slow hiss of spray paint whispered behind me. 2 artists with hoodies and gloves were tagging the base of the ad, layering strokes in colors too alive to be corporate. By the time they stepped away, it was no longer a billboard. It was a mural. They had crossed out the slogan and painted over it in wide strokes. You wrote back. People around me were taking pictures. I didn't move. Didn't smile. Not quite. I just looked up at the mural, hands tucked in the pockets of my thrifted jeans, and whispered, Now we start. We don't fix women, I said into the microphone, standing beneath the low-glow lights of the press hall. We just fund the volume they've been told to mute. The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. The silence that followed was rich, steady, and full. Like everyone finally heard what they had always felt but couldn't name. The Marin Initiative, named after my grandmother, not for legacy, but for lineage, was no longer just an idea sketched on the back of a napkin in Melissa's office. It was real. Launched. Staffed. Funded. Mentorship programs for women exiting exploitative contracts. Legal clinics in underfunded counties. A digital media curriculum for girls learning to decode the headlines about themselves. It had taken a year to build, but the roots had been planted long before that, pressed into me like the wildflower seeds my grandmother gave me as a child. Bloom where they never expect you, she'd said. And I had. Melissa walked up behind me after the speech, squeezing my hand once before turning to greet a state senator. She never needed to say more than that. By the time I returned to my new apartment, the city skyline was humming with dusk. No paparazzi. No leaked PDFs. Just windows lit one by one across the towers, like soft punctuation marks in a long sentence finally coming to a period. I peeled off my heels and stepped into the kitchen barefoot, letting the polished wood cool my skin. A glass of red wine waited from the bottle I opened last night. Candlelight flickered on the marble. I took it all in slowly. No excess. No armor. Just clarity. Then, almost like a ghost I had left unread, a ping broke the quiet. A single email notification. From William Blaine. Subject: Did you ever love me? I stared at it. The question wasn't sharp, it didn't even hurt. It just didn't belong here anymore. Without opening it, I clicked block sender. Then archived the thread. Then I opened a drawer by the bookshelf, a small one, marked discreetly in gold foil, closed lessons. Inside were only a few things: the velvet folder from that dinner, the original Blaine prenup, and the gold pen, still gleaming, still capped. I placed them gently inside and locked the drawer with a soft click. Not to forget. Just to finish. Peace, I'd learned, isn't always granted. Sometimes it's built, inch by inch, through every no you say when the world expects a yes. I curled up by the window, wine in hand. City below me. No headlines. No press releases. No William. Just stillness. And that was enough. There are doors that don't need to slam, just close gently to end it. I didn't win their game, because I never entered by their rules. In life, fame can come from many things, but dignity can only be kept by leaving quietly at the right time. Sometimes, power lies not in speaking loudly, but in knowing when to stop answering. If this story touches you, tell it in your own way, because everyone has a page left unwritten. And maybe it is the most important page.